What's it been like? I know you've given some lectures on the same platform as people like Bret Weinstein and Jordan Peterson. What's it like kind of discussing the faith with people who may or may not have a sort of more of a secular mindset, so they can appreciate Christianity for what it's given us, but they hold to a form of religion while denying its power?
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
Well, it's really been a surprise, to be honest, because before I met Jordan Peterson, I was mostly talking inside, right? So I was talking about Christian symbolism to Orthodox, describing symbolism and icons and all this stuff. So for years, I was editing a journal called the Orthodox Art Journal with other people. And so when Jordan kind of threw me out there, like he just kind of threw me out into the public, I encountered this secular crowd. And I tried to find ways to talk about these things in a way that would be understandable to secular people.
Yes.
And I've been really surprised to see that, there are a lot of people that are staying on the secular side, but I've seen thousands of people convert to Christianity, because they're at the end of the nihilism. They're at the end of this kind of weird postmodern world that has been given to them, and they're at the end of scientism as well. And so I've seen a lot of people finally understand, because one of the problems we've had is that people don't know what Christianity is talking about. A lot of times they think it's just either it's a kind of moralism or it's a kind of arbitrary thing that if you don't believe this, you go to hell, that kind of nonsense. Yep. But when people start discovering that it's actually talking about the structure of reality, and it's discussing how reality exists and how you need to engage with reality, then they're surprised and they're excited that that this is still available to them.
Yeah, I think that's why Jordan Peterson has been something of a gateway drug into Christianity for many people who have abandoned the faith as kids. He kind of helped it become intelligible to them in a way that they hadn't seen before. They didn't realize it was that sophisticated. They just, I don't know, maybe thought it had something to do with people who denied evolution or something.
Well, it's also because of it was kind of like the new atheist moment, which took over in the popular culture, and I don't know if it really took over in the high intellectual spheres, but it definitely took over popular culture. And so you could have a somewhat intelligent, not super smart person who had all the arguments laid out of how stupid religion is and how all these contradictions in scripture, all this kind of stuff, and how it doesn't fit with science. But then it's also because they were facing a bunch of people who were trying to read science into Genesis 1. Yeah. Which is so then these two things that face each other create this weird, monstrous cultural moment where we think that that's what Christians believe, and then there are actually some Christians who do think that.
Yeah.
So they've never encountered traditional Christianity before. These people.
Yeah.
Like you meet a kind of debunker, and they talk about what most Christians believe, and what they mean by most Christians isn't most Christians.
No, I know. It's like
they mean it's like Bible Belt, like this very narrow strip of.
And I find the most. I mean, I know there are a lot of very rational, fantastic atheists. I get it, but I think the most kind of angry ones tend to be people who kind of grew up in a fundamentalist home. They talk about how they grew up Christian, and you're like, that doesn't. The kind of Christianity you're describing that you grew up with doesn't actually sound like something I would get on board with either.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest Christian group is Catholic in the world. It's not this fundamentalist group, and Catholicism and
but then we have our own baggage, right? With the craziness going on, with all this talk of pedophilia and something the Pope said about something that he may have been taken. I mean, so we have our own way of making Christianity as a whole look suspect.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but there's a difference between let's say the worldview and the doctrinal positions, which are something, and then there are the kind of hypocrisy that you find in any group, any world, and the kind of the traitors that we find within the hierarchical structure. And so I think that it's important to be able to differentiate that, because
totally, but it just gives people an easy way to dismiss you. Like if I want to dismiss you and then I find out you have hypocrites in the ranks, easy, done. I take the moral high ground. I look super great. I get to point to your immorality while you've been trying to tell me to be moral,
And it's also it's easy because Catholicism is such a hierarchical structure. You can point to anybody, let's say anybody who has any authority in the Catholic Church, and say that's Catholic, and so and you can kind of incriminate the entire one of the biggest institutions in the history of the world, probably the biggest, and incriminate the entire institution because of the fact that in that massive billion people institution, there are some people who are using it to their own perverse advantage.
Yeah, I've often said, if you're looking for a perfect church, as soon as you join it, it won't be. Like, suppose you were to have found it. You join it. Have you met you? You're disgusting. It'll be awful. It's like, it's a lot easier, I guess, if you've got a small church down the road with 10 people to try to keep you all together. But when you've got a billion plus, you're going to find hypocrites for sure.
Thank you for watching this clip. You can click here to watch the full episode. And I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors and to our amazing patrons for making all of this possible. Please do us a favor before you go. Click that subscribe button and then the bell. And that way YouTube will be forced to let you know every time we put out a new episode.